Wow. One thing is, if you're not talking, maybe just mute yourself. If you have a question, obviously unmute yourself, talk, ask a question, because obviously I want this to be interactive. I don't want me just to answer everything for you guys and you take down notes, but please obviously take down notes. But I want to have you guys interact with this as well, so that you have just a better grasp on the question. So we're starting with the counseling exam, the ACBC counseling exam. There's two, as you guys know. There's a counseling exam and then a theology exam. And so we are going to be starting with the counseling exam. Part of the reason is I think we can kind of go through some of these questions maybe a little faster than some of the theology exams. I've had a few interactions recently with some people on some theology exam questions. And there's just maybe a lot more that needs to be said with some of those. Maybe a little more time, a little more interacting, excuse me, with those questions. And so we'll try to maybe move through these a little bit faster, but we'll see. Maybe these are going to bring up a ton of issues and questions I just am not anticipating, and that's fine. And so we're just going to go through starting with question 1, and go all the way through. We'll see how many questions we can go through today. I don't have I don't have like an agenda of how I want to get through this many. We'll just kind of see how many we can get through in our time. But again, please take notes, and that way you can answer these later with all of your notes. So question 1, what issues, ACBC can, again, counseling question 1, what issues should be covered in the introductory session with a counselee regardless of the counseling issue, and explain the importance of each issue. And remember, the exam questions are only supposed to be like a page and a half. Don't try to write a dissertation or a thesis. Keep it to a page and a half. So there's a lot you could say with this, but I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think are some good things that need to be covered in a first session? Now, remember that if you took classes through our CDBC or masters or something, or you read any of Wayne Mack's counseling theory books, you've heard of the 8 I's. So keep that in mind as well, in addition to some of the other things. So I want to hear from you guys. What do you guys think are some basic elements that are very important the first time you meet with somebody, especially somebody you don't know?
Well, you have to do some kind of history. I know that the church has a form that y'all use, and that's very helpful.
Yeah.
Basic historical information about them. I think it's important, since they're coming to Christian counseling too. What is their faith experience thus far? Are they even a believer? What are they coming for? What is the presenting problem, which may not be, usually not the core problem, but what do they think the problem is?
Okay, good.
Are they family things? Are they married? Are they divorced? Those kind of things.
Yeah, so it's good. You kind of covered 2 issues there really in that answer. So 1, you want to gather a lot of data. You want to use the PDI if you're using one. You want to use just a bunch of different questions to gather personal data. You want to be making sure that you're looking for nonverbal communication, nonverbal cues as well as kind of what is actually being said. places like Proverbs 18:13 are very helpful to keep in mind. 18:13 says, "He who gives an answer before he hears, it is what? Folly and shame to him." So you want to keep that in mind. And I will typically use that verse and say, look, I want to ask you some questions and kind of go through this form or go through just some other questions. But I want to mention a verse that indicate really why I'm doing that, because it may seem weird. It may seem like I'm kind of just diving into things you don't want to talk about, but I want to ask a lot of questions. So I'll use that verse. You want to gather a lot of data, and then Kim, you also mentioned the idea of understanding the problem. So you want to be able to discern what is the main issue here, or what are the main issues, and that could be done through the PDI. So that can be done by looking at what do they say the issue is? Why are they here? So you want to be able to discern the issues at hand. That could be like a point two or something for you. What do they say the issues are? And typically they're going to have a good idea because they're there. Sometimes they might not really know the core issue, the heart issue, but why are they there? You want to be able to think biblically through that issue. So if they are come in because they're saying they're an alcoholic or an addict or something, you're not going to maybe debunk that whole secular theory of I'm a drunk or I'm an alcoholic, whatever, right away. But you want to be able to think through, okay, they have some struggles with enslaving sins. They need to learn to deny self and to die to their self, and not be so enslaved with substances, but be controlled by the Spirit. Ephesians 5, Colossians 3. So you want to be able to discern what is the issue that brought them there. How are they thinking through that? What are their thoughts about it? How do they think they got there? That's very helpful. And even through asking some historical questions about them, or from them, maybe they're depressed. How long have they been depressed, or how long have they been anxious? How long, whatever. And that can sometimes be very helpful to see, well, I got depressed when I was this age, or a year ago at this time when this major crisis happened, or whatever. Sometimes it's not always that cut and dry, not always that easy, but you still want to be able to ask a lot of those questions. So again, you want to gather a lot of data. That's very important. The first session, you want to discern some problems that are going on. What else do you want to do? What do you think about giving them hope?
Yeah.
Giving them hope. The 8 I's. We're going through our methods class right now in our regular counseling training, and we'll discuss hope this next coming Monday. What's the importance? I know this is Phil, but this is Meg. Phil, what's the importance, brother, of giving hope to somebody during a first time counseling session?
I think, well, obviously, if they're there, they've probably lost hope or don't have hope,
Okay.
or
Good.
hope is something that we have. It's a Godward thing. And when we get so focused others word and lose the focus Godward, hope can be very skewed. So I think your Colossians 1, 28, 29, kind of explaining what biblical counseling is, and giving them maybe even like a hopeless situation in the Bible where great hope is realized. David's the typical hopeless situation, and there's great hope in repentance and faith. One of many you can think of.
Yeah, that's good.
Question, Matt. Could you put a verse exhort one another daily, or can you include verses in your answers that say why we should give hope, or where hope deferred makes the heart sick? Is that part of the answering process?
I wouldn't so much give that verse or the Hebrews 3 or Hebrews 10 verse, because those are more about I mean, you could give the Hebrews verse, but that's more a reason for why you're giving them like a homework assignment, or why you're instructing them, or why you're giving them answers to some of their problems. So I would say verses on hope, as kind of Phil pointed out, you can go to some of the Psalms that speak about David's repentance. So Psalm 32 would be a helpful one to go through and say, hold on, my son's at my door.
There's also a tremendous amount of hope found in just the promises of God's blessing. So like you could talk about the pillar Psalms too. Psalms 1, Psalm 119, verse 1 and 2, the Beatitudes. A lot of people go to the Beatitudes, talk about, the character qualities of someone who has hope, or the happy person. Literally, happy is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked. So just to hear that, like, happiness is blessedness. Happiness is such a skewed word, but blessedness is found in the Bible for those who hope in God. Another really good verse is Jeremiah 17, where it contrasts like Psalm 1, where it contrasts, the hopeless man who's like a dried up bush in a desert waste place, who makes man his own trust and trusts in himself. Whereas I think it's verse 7 says that, but blessed is the man, that's another blessed is the man who trusts in God and makes God his own trust, or Yahweh his own trust. Jeremiah 17.
Jeremiah 17, 6 and 7, or 7 and 8, something like that. That was our wedding verse. Yeah, Phil, good stuff, man. Other verses I would go to for hope would be like 1 Corinthians 10:13. That no temptations overtaking you such as has come to man. And the reason for that is not to make light of their situation, but to remind them, look, God knows that you're going to struggle. God knows that this is hard. God knows that life is really difficult. And so there are common issues. Yes, you are unique. You are an individual. But yet the struggles are common. So God's word has the answer for that. Again, we don't want to minimize their struggle and say, well, because it's common, like, kind of get over it. I mean, why is it so hard for you? We don't want to say that, obviously. But we want to be able to say God's word has the answers. A lot of hope is going to be built not on subjective feelings or subjective changes in their situation, but on the word of God.
Yeah.
Lamentations 3. Went too fast. Past that. Jeremiah, Lamentations 3:21. This I recall to mind, therefore I have hope. Well, what does he recall to mind? Verse 22, the Lord's, or Yahweh's, loving kindness indeed never ceases. The compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And that's a very helpful verse for somebody who's maybe downcast or depressed or discouraged, or they've gone through a major crisis of, look, the Lord's mercies are new every morning.
Yeah.
What does that mean? The Lord's mercies are new every morning. You can teach them, you can tell them, like, look, they're basically what it means is the new every morning. Like the Lord's mercy never runs out. It never fails. He's never like exhausted. He never wakes up like I do. Like, I can't go on. I can't do this anymore. I'm so tired. He's never like that. They're new every morning. You think, man, this whole day I've exhausted the Lord's mercy in my life. Well, no, the next day it's the same. And so there's a lot of hope there. Hope also in the sufficiency of Scripture. So 2 Timothy 3, 16, 17, you can go there. 2 Corinthians 4:8, you could maybe mention this verse as well, that we are afflicted, Paul said, in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not, he says, despairing. So that could be a very helpful verse as well.
There was there was an opportunity I had to help someone with Psalm 107 too. I don't know if you remember Eric preaching on him, but that was like, I think he preached on Psalm 107. That was the 3 case studies of hopelessness and hope found in the
Okay.
enduring love of God.
Yes.
Like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
see people who are like wasting away in their sad situations. And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden he says, let them thank the Lord for his steadfast love, for his wondrous works to the children of men. That's like the stanza in it. And he's bringing people out of their hopelessness by his
Mhm.
steadfast loving kindness.
Yeah, it's good. Yep. Yeah, Psalm 107. Again, also with dealing with hope, you want to be able to make sure that you are labeling and talking about sin and speaking about sin as sin, because when we do so, we have the solution in the Bible for how to deal with it. Talking to some people who are ex-addicts, they find a lot of hopelessness in the idea of I'm an addict, or I'm a drunk, I'm an alcoholic. It's more biblical to say, you're a drunkard, you're enslaved to these sins. Why? Because there's hope in that if you can change, rather than I'm an addict and I'll always be one. That stinks. Or I was counseling somebody one time, and they went to a psychiatrist, I believe, and they said, the psychiatrist diagnosed me with an anxiety disorder, said you have to take pills for the rest of your life. And they were just like, I can't believe it. And so there's just a lot of hopelessness there that that you want to be able to just gently bring scripture to bear. While somebody is anxious, they're suffering in that discouragement and that sin. But there's much hope that can be found in the midst of that anxiety or that despair. Building hope is also going to mean you're helping them to think biblically about the situation and not, I want to get out of it. Help me get out of this trial, but how do I endure through the trial? So that could be, places, again, 1 Corinthians 10:13. No temptations overtaking you such as is common to man, but God is faithful, and he will what?
Provide a way for you to bear up under it.
Yeah, it says God is faithful. This is the exact verse here, or the exact wording. Who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you're able, but with the temptation will provide the way of escape so that you will also be able to endure it. Now, the idea there, people say, well, God, he says the way of escape, so I should be able to get out of my trial. That's not what God is speaking about there. And he's saying, and nor should we say that God won't give you more than you can handle. God always gives us more than we can handle on our own strength. But what this verse is saying, look, God's not going to place you in an impossible situation where you have no ability other than to sin and then blame God for it.
Right.
And the context is Israel. Like, well, come on, God. I mean, we're your people and we're in the wilderness and we had no choice but to sin and to do this. And God's like, no, that's not what's going on here. So that's God won't put you in a situation where you have no ability or nothing, no other choice other than to sin. But with the temptation to sin, he will provide the way of escape in the sense of escaping the sin. He'll provide a way of you to escape not the trial, but to escape the temptation to sin, to endure the trial, to endure the hardship, to endure the suffering, to endure the temptation without sinning, as Christ did. Christ endured temptation 100%. He never caved into it. He always was bearing the weight of that temptation and never gave into it, as we often do. And so there's a lot of hope there as you explain these verses to people. One of the great things about biblical counseling is, as Dr. Street likes to call it, actually, is expository counseling. You guys heard that before? Expository counseling? Jill, you have? Because you're not just giving them verses and saying, oh, here's a great verse and think about it, but you're explaining the verse, you're expositing the verse to them. And so there's just a lot of hope in that. Some people hate it, some people don't want it, and they're going to refuse it, and that's fine. Sort of, obviously. Not fine because we want them to trust in the Lord, but it's fine in the sense of it's not up to you to make them do that. So anyway, I've answered this. We've gone on and on about this question. Another thing I would say about the first session is, again, you want to gain involvement. Again, think of the 8 I's here. You want to gain involvement. You want to gain involvement. 1 Thessalonians 2:7-9. says that we prove to be gentle among you as a nursing mother tenderly cares for her own children, having so fond an affection for you. Paul says we are well pleased to impart to you not only the gospel, but our own lives, for you to become very dear to us. And so you want to show that to people you're meeting with and counseling and discipling. That might not come across to them at the first session, but that comes as you give them hope. That comes as you empathize with them. That comes as you weep with them when they're struggling. That comes as you ask them good questions. That comes as you're helping them to see hope and helping them to see that the solutions are found in God's word. That happens as you say, hey, look, here's my email, here's my phone number, call me when you're struggling this week. You're imparting your own life to them. That's something else I would say. Also, again, as you're kind of going towards the end of the first session, is you want to teach them something. You want to teach. You can't leave that out. You want to teach them something. You're teaching them about hope. You're teaching them about God's solutions to life's problem. You're, Colossians 1:28. You're proclaiming to them Christ. You're giving them the gospel. You want to teach something to them depending on the issue. Biblical counseling, one of the great marks of it is teaching. And then you want to, there's about 6 things here that I have that I would say. And the last one, number 6, would be giving them homework. You could go through all 8 I's, but kind of summary here. Giving them homework. So you want to give them something to do throughout the week. James 1, not only hears the word, but be doers of the word. And that could look very different for every situation. But you want to be able to give them something to look to in the scriptures for greater guidance, for greater hope, and so on. Any other thoughts or questions about what are the important things to deal with or to cover in a first session?
I got 5 of 6. You said I have 6 things here, but you only give us 5. I got gather data, give them hope, gain involvement, teach them something, and then give them the homework. Be doers.
Yeah.
Was there one more you want to mention?
Yeah, one more. As Kim kind of brought up, she mentioned too, sort of in her answer earlier, was you want to discern the issues, discern the problem. So that way you can articulate to them, here's what I hear you say the problems are. Sometimes I will, towards the end of a session, I will say, okay, so here's what I'm hearing you say some of the issues are. What do you see as the core issue that we're trying to deal with? Or I'll list out for like a marriage case. I'll list out, here's the 8 issues or the 10 or 12 issues that you expressed to me through your conversation today that you're struggling with. Are these accurate? So it could look a variety of ways, but it's something you want to be able to do in the first session, is to know why you're there. Sometimes it's going to be hard. Like I think Jill's been in a few meetings with me where I'm like, I don't really know what the main issue is. I'm not sure yet. I don't know. It can take time to develop that depending on the nature of the person and the issue at hand. So, but you want to try to do your best to figure out, okay, what is the main issue here? Or what are the issues at hand? And maybe the problem is they just don't know the Lord. And that's the main issue at hand. So,
hey, Matt, what about verses such as 2 Corinthians 10:5, bringing their thoughts captive, trusting in the Lord with all their heart and everything give thanks, or Psalm 103, where it says to praise the Lord and forget not his benefits?
Yeah, those are good.
He lists all of them. Are those good ones for encouragement, or
sure?
All closer?
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I mean, those are great verses for maybe giving instruction or giving hope or something, or gaining involvement. Sure. Yeah, you can list yeah. I'm just giving you just a handful of them.
Okay.
Matt.
Yes,
Phil,
Mary.
Phil kind of tied this in beautifully about giving them hope, and in doing that, explaining what biblical counseling is. But Don't you find that
Mhm.
if you're counseling someone for the first time whom you don't know, I would think that it was pretty important to explain to them what biblical counseling is, because you can't assume
Sure.
that they know that you're going to be looking for answers solely based on biblical truth.
Yeah, so it's good. Yeah, that's a whole. I could be 0.7 or whatever in there, and I mean, obviously, you don't have to go through the 6 things that I did. You could summarize everything according to your own um, answer there. But yeah, maybe you put in there is it's important for me to explain um, uh, what biblical counseling really is, or you could just summarize that as explain the sufficiency of Scripture.
Well, I
Um,
believe Phil tying it in with scriptures on hope, I think that's a beautiful way to do it,
yeah,
and to marry
sure.
those two together.
Yeah, that's good. For me, I'll do it a variety of ways depending on the person or depending on um, maybe the situation. If it's somebody who I can tell is kind of hesitant to be there, I might go a little more detail into what counseling is and all that. Others, I may integrate it different ways. But typically, I'll start out a lot of my first sessions explaining why I'm asking questions and kind of gathering data, and with that, briefly explain some about biblical counseling. And then when I'm giving homework, I'll explain more about the importance of it because, or more about what biblical counseling is, just because they may not understand why do I have to do stuff throughout the week. My other therapist just lets me Netflix and chill. I mean, so what do I have to do? So there's different ways to kind of integrate that, but yeah, that could be very important.
One more
Hey, Matt,
question.
go ahead, Kim.
Oh, sorry. Um, what about talking to them about the limits of confidentiality or any of that? Do you
Yeah,
do that in the first section
I mean
in
that's
biblical
in
counseling?
the consent form. I
Okay.
will briefly go through that with them. I'll say, "Did you read it? Do you have any questions?" And I'll briefly just go through it with them. And I've never really had a lot of people have take issue with that. To me, that's sort of a side issue, a side note. Now, if they tell me in the first session, "Hey, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to promise never say anything," I will tell them I can't, and
Yeah.
here's why. But
Mhm.
I don't really make it a big deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's just one of the paperwork formalities. So we might just put paperwork formalities, you know, as
Yeah,
part
you
of
could.
it.
Yeah,
Good.
sure.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. Phil, you had a question?
It's not really in the question, but it seems like when I think about the counseling videos we've seen, um, what would you say are the 2 pitfalls to avoid, or like pitfalls to avoid in your first session?
um,
Just briefly,
talking
I
a
know
lot.
yeah.
You want to ask a lot of questions, not give a lot of answers. You do want to give answers. You do want to give hope, but you want to ask a lot of questions and listen. So I think a pitfall number 1 would be to talk too much first session. And number 2, again, with that, to talk too much and not ask questions, that's a pitfall. So I'm removing my pad here on my foot. Um, um, and a second one would be, I mean, there's a few, but I think another one would be not using the Bible. Just to ask a lot of questions, and not give them any hope through God's word. Just to say, okay, well, cool, I have a lot of info here. Time's up. It's like been an hour and a half. Oops. I've just let you talk the whole time. That's that's bad too, because then they're like, well, why did I come here? And you want to set the precedent as much as you're able to of, I want to hear you, but I also want to give you counsel from God's word.
That's good.
You're not here just to talk to me. This isn't a talk therapy session where you lay on a couch and I just daydream while you talk and don't really give you any answers. We're not doing it. Right? You can watch What About Bob if you want to do that.
That's funny.
All right. We should move on here. Question 2. Question 2. So describe at least six biblical strategies to develop a caring relationship with your counselee. So this is kind of like involvement, like 8 eyes, number 1, involvement, kind of like that. You're kind of, how do you do that? So clearly identify each strategy and ground its use in a specific passage of scripture, explaining its practical utility to building a relationship. That's a long question. So basically, there's six different strategies to help develop involvement or caring relationship, and then what are some scriptures and explaining why that's important. So let me just go through some of these just for sake of time. I'll give you my 6 that these are different questions than what I had. Some of them are the same, but some of them are very different. So I would say one that we talked actually a lot about in our first counseling methods class of involvement is compassion. You want to develop, you want to have compassion. One strategy is to be compassionate. Again, you can change these. You don't have to use these, but this is what I would say. You want to have compassion. I think you can probably hopefully explain why compassion is compatible with developing a caring relationship with them. So I'll let you answer that. But some scriptures I would point out would be Acts 20:31, where Paul says, "Night and day I was with you with tears. I exhorted you with tears." I think you could look at Matthew 9, where Christ looked out on the crowd and it says he felt compassion on them, for they were sheep without a shepherd. I think you could also look at 2 Corinthians 2:4. Now I wrote it down and I can't remember what it exactly says. For Paul says, "For out of much affliction and anguish of heart, I wrote to you with many tears, not so that you would be made sorrowful, but that you might know the love which I have, especially for you." And so you see the compassion of these ministers of Christ in the apostles. You see the compassion of Christ. So I think it's a very important element or component to developing a caring relationship, is you show compassion to them. And that's going to be developed even through how you are listening, how you're interacting. Again, you want to think about their struggles and place yourself in their shoes, so to speak. So that's what I would say. Secondly, I would say you want to show them respect or show them honor. Show them respect or show them honor. Romans 12:10 says that we need to outdo one another in showing them honor. Excuse me. Give preference to one another in honor. Excuse me. Give preference to one another in honor. And so you want to honor them, respect them as fellow human beings, as image bearers, as we discussed in our class. Show that they're image bearers of God. You want to honor them that they are coming here and it's difficult to talk about their problems. And you want to honor that and show respect to that. And that's going to maybe look like using just helpful verbal communication to them. You're clearly communicating the word of God to them. You're showing proper nonverbal communication. So you're taking notes, you're paying attention, you're not looking at your phone, you're not being distracted by other things as much as you're able to. You're taking their problems seriously, you're believing them. You're not just saying, no, it doesn't matter or whatever. So showing respect and honor is gonna show itself in a few things. You want to show thankfulness to them. You want to maintain confidentiality as much as you're able to, and so on. I think that's a helpful way to show that you care, is to show them honor that way. To listen to them, take time to listen to them, ask them questions and wait for them to answer. Not answer for them, not try to feed them answers either. One time I was counseling and for Dr. Street, a class for Dr. Street, and he had me record the counseling session, and we watched it in front of the whole class. That was fun. It was real. It was a live. It was a live session. It wasn't made up. It was real. and at one point we're watching the video, and Dr. Street pauses and says, "Why did you do that?" Like, why? Why did I do what? I don't know what I did. He's like, "Why did you answer their question? You didn't let them answer." He wasn't really angry. He was just like, "Don't ever do that." It's like, it's okay to be silent. Like, it's okay for there to be a quietness and a silence in the time to let them answer. So I've tried to do that. Sometimes I still find myself trying to answer for them. Like, oh, do you mean this? Like, oh yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I just fed them an answer that maybe they don't know what that means, or they just are trying to say what I want them to say. So that's going to be shown honor as well. Let them answer without trying to spoon feed them. Third, I would say you want to be genuine or sincere in who you are. Being genuine and sincere. You can also add in there just showing, Christ-like characteristics of fruit of the Spirit and so on. But you at times you're going to want to, depending on the situation, maybe you're going to share your own story, your own struggles of, hey, I struggle with anxiety too, depression. Can I share with you about some of that real quick? Just can I share for 5-10 minutes on how the Lord has used that trial in my life to grow me? So you want to be sincere and genuine in those things. You want to be honest with some of your own weaknesses. You want to be honest about your own limitations as well. Maybe they're coming in and say, hey, I want to talk to somebody who's an experienced addictions counselor. Well, I've only dealt with like one person, so I'm not experienced, but the Word of God is experienced and whatever, So you don't want to say, oh, I've dealt with 100 of these cases. No, we don't want to lie to people. Be honest with your again, be honest with your weakness, but be careful of how much you share about your weakness, because they may say, well, why am I here with you? Your problems seem worse than mine. So you want to be careful of that, but you still want to be sincere and genuine. You want to, if they're crying, if they're weeping, you don't want to show compassion to that. If they're, you don't want to give a fake laugh. Ha ha ha, that was funny. You want to be genuine about those things. I'd say number 4, you want to, again, this is part of a lot of these things, but I would have its own category of listening well. And you could add to that taking notes. I think it's one strategy to develop a caring relationship is to listen very well and to take notes. Again, Proverbs 18:13. It's going to be helpful with that. That's a verse you can add in there. Proverbs 18:13, 18:17. The first 2 please case things right until another comes to examine him. You want to listen well to somebody to know how to give an answer, to take notes so you can go back through and say, well, okay, well, we talked about this, or you said this. Do you remember that? Also, listening well helps you to be able to clarify the issues. Like, hey, I'm hearing you say this. Is that right? And when you do that, I mean, just in a normal relationship, a normal friendship, I mean, it's helpful to have people listen to you and to respond to that. They might not know exactly how to respond, but they know that they're responding because they're listening to you. They're caring. And even in my kind of normal relationships, regular just life on life relationships, I don't always take notes when I'm talking to people, but just try to give feedback or answer questions, or not ask questions for clarity on certain things. Like, oh, did you say this, or did you mean this, or I'm hearing you say this is hard, or I'm hearing you say this is exciting, or whatever. Just so I'm practicing kind of that skill. I need to do a better job at that. I need to do a better job of that in my own home. But listening well is a helpful skill to show compassion, or to show that you care. Number 5, I would also say the Bible, again, this is sort of not repetitive of the first one, but I guess I have 6 in both, don't I? Well, whatever. I think to have a compassionate, or not a compassionate, a caring relationship, I think you want to be able to speak the truth in love to somebody. Ephesians 4:15. I think that's a strategy to show that you care. So it's going to be a little different maybe than teaching, but you're speaking the truth in love. You are you're not shying away from the truth, but you're knowing, maybe using discernment as to when to share it or how to share it. You're not watering it down, you're not dumbing it down, but how do I share this truth in a way that's going to be most helpful? You want to shy away from the idea, well, how can I make them like, how can I make this necessarily more palatable? Because that can tend to you watering something down, or refusing to say some difficult truths. But how can I make it in a way that is going to be most helpful to them in this moment? So we need to speak the truth to people, but we need to speak the truth in love. And so that may mean I'm gonna I'm gonna say this truth from God's word in in a particular session, or I'm gonna say it in a way in a different tone of voice than maybe I would with somebody else. So I'm going to confront them with a different in a different manner than I would a good friend of mine or whatever. But you want to speak the truth in love to people. I think that's a helpful category. And then I think another thing, I'm not really sure how to like categorize this, but again, it's the idea of 1 Thessalonians 2. Let me open that up. 1 Thessalonians 2. Whoops. Where it's sort of similar to being genuine and honest, but it's more the idea of you're opening yourself up to them, you're opening your life to them, you're sharing your life to them. Again, we prove to be gentle among you, having so fond an affection, verse 8, that we are well pleased to impart to you not only the gospel, but also our own lives. You become very dear to us. And that's a very helpful way to show that you care, is you're sharing your life. And that's going to look like hanging out outside of the counseling room. That's going to look like, chatting and talking on Sundays. That's going to look like having them over to your home, maybe, or that's going to look like having getting other people involved in their lives. That's not just you trying to be their hero or their savior to help them with their problems, but you're trying to get them involved into the life of the church. You're investing time, you're sacrificing time, you may have to like give up some sleep to deal with certain issues. You're going to be giving people your number to say, call me when you're struggling, like especially if someone who's discouraged or depressed a lot. They just give me a call when you're struggling with this. I've had a handful of people call in the middle of the night or close to the middle of the night saying, hey, I'm suicidal, or hey, my spouse just left me. What do I do? And I think that's a helpful way to show that you care, so that they that way they can trust you with their problems maybe a little more. There's probably other things you could say. You can add in there, don't minimize the problems. You can add in there to the number 6 that I said about sharing your life, but be willing to do whatever it takes to help. Be willing to do whatever it takes to help them. Again, that could be calling them to say, hey, where are you? Or texting them, bugging them, so to speak, about showing up to something. You know, if they need help, hey, can you, I need help talking to my spouse, or talking to a friend, or talking to a coworker, or talking to a child, or whatever. You can help them think through how they can do that. Or maybe you have to get involved and you call that friend, say, hey, you know, so-and-so talked to me and said they want to get together with you, but they're just a little timid, scared. Can I help facilitate that conversation or whatever? One of the things I'm learning in my conflict and mediation sort of training is that if you're going to get involved in a conflict, a relational conflict, be prepared to get dirt flung on you. Be prepared to get dirty in the conflict. Conflicts are messy. Relationships are messy. And you need to be ready for that. And so I think that's one of the things we just need to be thinking about is when we're talking to our counselees is I need to be ready to help them. And to come alongside them kind of no matter what the issue may be. Does that make sense? Cool. One of my children is crying outside. Let's take like a 5-minute break, actually. 3-minute break. Just take 3 minutes, and we'll come back. And move on to question 3. All right. Again, there's always more we can say to these questions, but I'm realizing how long it's taking to answer some of them, so we gotta keep moving. Question 3. And provide a biblical theology of emotions. Here we go. This is easy. Provide a biblical theology of emotions. What role should a counselor allow a counselee's emotions to play in counseling? And how can one tell the difference between sinful emotions and righteous emotions? And how would you use scripture to help a counselee change improper emotions? A couple, lots of stuff here. So a dictionary definition of emotions is, you can Google this and look it up, Merriam-Webster, is a conscious mental reaction, such as anger or fear, subjectively experienced as strong feeling, usually directed towards a specific object and typically accompanied by psychological and behavioral change in the body. That's Merriam-Webster's definition of emotions. That's packed. I would say a biblical definition, and they're not really asking you to define it, but just give a biblical theology of it. But I would say you could say this about emotions. Emotions are feelings that we have based on our perception of experiences or events. Emotions are just different feelings we have that are based off of our perceived experiences and events in life. You could also say that you talk about how emotions inaccurate. Emotions often can come from inaccurate perceptions of reality. Emotions can come from inaccurate perceptions of reality that can affect how we live, what we do, what we say, what we don't do, what we don't say. You could say that you can also say that feelings or our emotions, rather, emotions come from the heart, but come from a person's thoughts, their speech, their actions that arise from their different circumstances in life. we don't want to say, and we don't want to give the idea that emotions are sort of a separate category that the scripture doesn't really deal a lot with. But emotions need to be tweaked according to God's word, because our feelings are going to come from our perception of reality. And if it's an inaccurate perception of reality, we're going to have negative emotions that that need to be adjusted. So that's a sort of an intro. Now, a couple things here. When we're talking about a theology of emotions, we need to look at kind of in answering these questions, are emotions legitimate? And the answer is yes. God created humans with emotion. That's part of being made in the image of God, because God is a God of emotion. God loves. Love isn't primary emotion, but there's an emotional aspect to it. Love. The phileo sort of love is sort of love is there's an emotional element there. So there's love. God gets angry. Anger is an emotional response, both good and bad. God never sins in his anger, but God gets angry. A couple different verses for that you can look up. Exodus 4:14, Numbers 14:18. God gets angry. God is grieved, and the Holy Spirit gets grieved. Ephesians 4:30. There's a grieving aspect to that. There's an emotional element to grief. Jesus wept. John 11:35. It shows sort of his human emotions there. He was saddened by people's sin, and so on. So there's emotions are very legitimate and very normal as part of the human experience, because we're made in the image of God. And so believers need to have emotional responses, proper emotional responses towards each other, of loving people with a brotherly affection. As Paul said in Romans 12, we have a brotherly affection toward people. However, our emotions can often be skewed by a wrong understanding of the Bible, or a wrong understanding of circumstances. And we can often let our emotions rule us rather than us ruling our emotions. We let our emotions control what we do rather than taking control of our emotions, because our emotions are going to be closely connected to our thoughts and our heart, our worship. Our emotions are connected to our thoughts, and so we need to take our thoughts captive, and to be able to think rightly. Even if we don't feel or have a positive emotional response, we still need to obey the scriptures regardless of how we feel. So when the question kind of asks, what role should a counselor allow a counselor's emotions to play in counseling, it's going to depend on the situation. It's going to depend on, are they allowing their feeling of, I don't really feel like doing that, or I don't really feel like this is helping or working. If their response is, if their response to obeying God's word is based off of their emotions, then a counselor shouldn't allow the counselee to be okay with those emotional responses. If that makes sense. A counselor wants to help a counselee adjust their emotional responses based off of the word of God, the objective word of God, not based off of their subjective circumstances or their subjective feelings. I think a helpful way to tell a difference between sinful emotions and righteous emotion is, are they sinning? Are they allowing their emotions to dictate what they do or what they don't do? That's a helpful way. Are they allowing their emotions to dictate what they do or don't do? Or are they allowing their emotions to lead to sinful actions such as anger? Well, I'm angry because my spouse did this, And so I feel I can be angry and be justified in my anger. So because anger is an emotional response, we need to help somebody think through that. I'm sure your spouse committed adultery, or your spouse did this, or whatever, your kid did this, but that doesn't justify a sinful emotional response. Yeah, sure, you're hurt and you have deep emotional hurts there, because of what your spouse did, or because of what your friend did, or because of what happened, and you were hurt, legitimately so. But you cannot allow that emotional response of anger or of fear to now control your obedience to God's word. We don't want to let, again, a subjective sort of emotion dictate what I do or what I don't do. We want to be able to think biblically about something, act on it, and then maybe have that emotional response later. Like Christ says to love your enemies, Matthew 5. Okay, well, I might not feel like loving my enemy right now. Christ didn't really say that. He didn't say feel like it and do it. He just said love your enemies. You need to do that. Christ probably didn't really have a super awesome emotional experience in the Garden of Gethsemane. But what was his response? He didn't let his emotions dictate his response. His response was, not my will, but yours be done. And he obeyed to the point of death, even death on a cross. Right? Philippians 2. He obeyed perfectly. And so we need to learn to take our thoughts captive as we are thinking through our emotional sort of struggles, rather than let our emotions just blow up and dictate my obedience. Well, I don't feel like going to church. Somebody told me that recently. I don't really feel like going to church, so I didn't go. I just said, the Bible doesn't care if you feel like going to church. You were commanded to. It's not like you were sick. It's not like you were gone. You just didn't want to go because you were afraid of what people were going to think. And so this person was letting their emotions of fear dictate their obedience. And so we want to help them think through that. So some scriptures, obviously you can go to the Garden of Gethsemane passages to help people think through how to adjust their emotions. You can look at, you can even look at Joseph in Genesis 50, or 50. You can look at Joseph's emotional response, or Joseph's response to his brothers of, hey, you meant this for evil, but God meant this for good. I mean, there's emotion there. You can look at you can look at 2 Corinthians 7:10. Actually talks about sorrow that leads to repentance. So that's an emotional response that leads to repentance. And there's so many other things. You can look at Paul's emotional sorrow for response over Israel's unbelief. Romans 9, he says, I wish that I was accursed so that all of you would be saved. That was a proper emotional response. So you can look at some scriptures. Ephesians 4, 26 and 27, it says, be angry, yet do not sin. Don't let the sun go down in your anger. Right? So you can look at some of these scriptures to talk about emotions. You can look at some Psalms to talk about God's emotions, that God's righteous anger, and other places, and help people see how they need to take their thoughts captive and take their emotions under control and still walk in obedience regardless of how they feel. Regardless of how they feel. So like somebody who's depressed and there's an emotional element there, I mean, you help them to see, okay, we need to obey and do things even if you don't feel like it. Somebody who's angry because of a sin committed against them, you help them, like your anger may feel justified, but it's not. It's sinful. And so we need to help them to think through, obviously, biblical repentance, but also how can then you still love somebody who has hurt you and offended you? Well, we look at Christ. How did he love us? For 1 John says that Christ first loved us. So we need to think, how can I love somebody even though like they've really offended me, and not let my emotions dictate my sinful responses to them? There's a whole kind of movement and sort of even some quote unquote biblical counseling circles that don't really deal with a lot of emotions, or they excuse emotional responses as that's just kind of the human experience, and we don't really want to get into that and tell people they can't feel sad or they can't feel depressed or they can't express their anger in a certain way. And I just don't really think that's a very biblical way to deal with it, because they're excusing sinful emotions. Another resource you could look at if you have a lot of time and want to read something or listen to something is called Faith and Feelings by Brian something. It's on Hoopla. The free library app on Hoopla. Brian, look it up real quick. I think I want to say Brian Borgman, but I can't. I don't know if that's right. Yeah, Brian Borgman. Okay, Faith and Feelings by Brian Borgman. Borgman. Faith and Feelings. It's very helpful. It's been around for a decade or so. Very helpful resource. He just goes through the theology of emotions. And, yep.
Hey, Matt.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yes, Jill.
So you're encouraging people to do the right thing anyways, no matter how they feel, but then are you encouraging people to like repent of wrong emotions? Kind of like
Yes.
viewing emotions as sin?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and I thought I mentioned that, but maybe I didn't. In my head, I thought about it, but maybe I didn't say it out loud. Yeah, we want to encourage people. So kind of the last answer to that question is how to use the scripture. You want to encourage them to repent. You want to encourage them to repent of their sinful emotions of sinful fear, sinful anger, or of letting their emotions cause them to lead them to disobedience. And you want to help them connect their emotional responses to their heart. You maybe drew in a 3-tree diagram or something to show that, look, your emotional responses aren't separated from the rest of who you are. Like God made you a whole person that way. And so we need to look at, why are you emotionally responding like this? What is going on in your heart, your worship, that is leading to those responses?
So then changing the emotions would be changing the thoughts, changing the behavior, praying and asking the Lord to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the emotional response that maybe like you still kind of aren't super stoked about somebody, but you still need to love them, and that's okay. I don't want to tell somebody, well, because you don't feel like loving somebody, just don't do it because it's fake. I'm not buying into that, because I don't see that anywhere in scripture. That is sort of a movement. It's sort of kind of a John Piper-ish sort of movement, if you will. If I don't feel like it, I shouldn't obey because I'm doing it out of not out of faith. I think we need to still obey, even if I don't feel like it, and even if I'm still kind of like, I don't want to do this. I still think we need to encourage people to do it, because not obeying is disobedience. And even if I'm obeying with sort of some tail end frustration and sinful emotion, I'm still obeying. And that emotional response can be tweaked. And I'm praying for God to change my emotion. I'm praying for God to help me to love. I'm praying for God to help me to feel whatever emotion may be lacking there. But I still need to be walking and encourage people to walk in obedience, even if I don't feel like it, so that I can get in that habit and that pattern of walking, I think, more faithfully.
And Matt, not only that, but even in grudging obedience, it allows the Spirit to work on their hearts So we just trust that the Spirit will work in their hearts to then convict them of that
Yeah.
grudging.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so it's kind of like, oh, somebody, I don't really feel like going to church because I'm afraid, because I'm angry at somebody. Oh, okay. Well, because you don't really feel like going to church, like, it's okay. No, go to church. And maybe just sit there in silence. I don't know. Just don't say anything because you don't sin. But you still need to go. Or like telling a spouse, well, because like you don't really like, because your spouse like sinned against you and you're kind of angry. I guess, because you don't really feel like it and your heart's not all the way in it, you don't really need to love them. Or because or you don't really need to serve them, or you don't really need to submit to them. No, you still need to obey, even if you don't feel like it. But the thing is, you, as Joe kind of pointed out, you want to help them to repent of that, and part of that repentance is going to be prayer. Pray that God will help you to obey, and God will help you to like have a positive emotional feeling toward them, or response towards them. Even if he doesn't, it doesn't matter. You need to still obey. And the more that you do that, Mary, as you said, you're going to get in that habit, that pattern of obedience. And oftentimes the emotions kind of come along with it. Again, Christ said, love your enemies. Oh, my enemies in my own home. It doesn't excuse it. You still need to love your enemies. Again, I'm not saying this is easy, but that's how we need to respond. That's how we need to help people to respond.
Is it
Good.
appropriate to get them to memorize verses like he that has no, or the principles of why we don't let our feelings dictate what we do?
Absolutely, yeah. No, yeah, we definitely want to do that. But here I'm not so much giving like a direction for answering the question of how, like, what homework I would give them, but just giving we're just trying to answer the question there, and so we're just giving some of the theology of that. But yeah, we definitely would want to give them homework assignments on by memorizing and reading certain scriptures that deal with their emotions. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
Hey, Matt.
Yeah.
Can I ask? We were given a book recently, and I haven't read it, but John M.
What book is that?
Frame, Untangling Emotions.
By
Have you
John
heard about
Frame?
it? John Frame recommends it.
Oh, John Frame recommends it.
Yeah, it was written by
I
J.
have heard
Alistair
of it.
Groves. Go ahead.
I don't know. I really don't know anything about it. I have heard of the book. I don't know anything about the author. I don't really know anything about it.
Okay.
It could be
Who is
great
the
or it could be
author on
bad.
that?
J. Alistair Groves and Winston T. Smith.
I've read most of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought it was really good. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Joe, you told me about that. That's right.
Yeah.
So Winston Smith. Okay, I know Winston Smith. He's an ACBC counselor.
I think it was on like the ACBC 2019 like top recommends or whatever. So.
Great. Cool. I know I've seen it around. I just haven't read it. But I've read some Winston Smith stuff before. I think he even has like a background in medicine, doesn't he? Oh, maybe not. Maybe a different guy. But I've read Winston Smith stuff actually. Some of his stuff on marriage. It's pretty helpful. Yeah, good stuff. So then kind of moving on to question 4 then, sort of emotion, sort of related here, is anger. Anger. So provide a biblical definition of anger. Question 4. Provide a biblical definition of anger. Describe manifestations of anger in both the inner and outer man. Explain biblical factors that drive anger, and then detail several biblical strategies to respond. So a couple of the questions after this are going to be dealing with anger, worry, anxiety, depression, and they're kind of all, the questions are very, very similarly formatted. So a definition, a couple of definitions here. I like Robert Jones. I like his short definition from his book, Uprooted Anger, on page 15. He says, anger is a whole personed response, or a whole personed active response, a whole personed active response of negative moral judgment against perceived evil. A whole person active response of negative moral judgment against perceived evil. And I like how he says that it's a whole person, so it's body and mind or emotion. And he defines it in such a way that it can be both good and bad, sinful or non-sinful. I appreciate that about that answer, because anger is not sinful in and of itself. So, but it is an emotional response. And so that's a definition of anger that I like to use, biblical definition. So again, that's one of the very few quotes that I would probably have in my answers, just because he's going to say it way better than I could make it up. But again, you want to be able to give in your answer, look, anger in and of itself is not sinful. God himself manifests anger and shows anger in a few ways. What's one of the greatest examples of God's anger in the Bible? I guess there's a few. Well, the cross was one. He has to deal with sin. That's probably the foremost. But there's a massive one that we often overlook, I think.
Oh,
The flood?
The flood.
Yeah.
I mean, some estimates are between 500 million to 1 billion people died, something like that. And that's a lot of people, and all these animals. Why? Because God said, I am sorry that I made man on the earth. I'm going to wipe them out. He's angry at their sin. He's angry at them for sinning. One of the Psalms, I can't remember where, it says that God is a righteous God, and he has righteous indignation, a righteous hatred every day, righteous anger every day. So anger is not in and of itself sinful. Christ got angry in the temple a few times, at least twice that we are aware of. However, anger becomes sinful when it is selfishly motivated, when it's about me and my kingdom, and when I allow it to like just take root in my heart and like become bitter. Ephesians 4:31-32. Anger becomes sinful when it's selfishly motivated, like, hey, you sinned against me, so I'm going to respond in anger. God's anger, and Christ never got angry because he was sinned against. Christ got angry because the Father was dishonored, because the temple was dishonored, because the places of worship were dishonored, because other people were affected by that. We cannot justify our anger when we are sinned against and it becomes selfishly motivated. Well, how dare they say this about me and whatever. No. Nope. That's sinful. Anger becomes sinful when it's selfishly motivated. It's now about me and my kingdom rather than God and his kingdom. And I allow that anger to fester. And so sometimes we can have righteous anger about something that somebody was sinned against, or some injustice happened. But then it quickly turns into sin. Oh, that person was abused. Oh, I want to like punch that person in the face. I was righteously angry for about a half a second, and then I sinned. So, we need to be careful with that. Christ wasn't angry because he was mistreated. He was angry because he saw others mistreated and how the Father was disrespected and dishonored. We can have righteous anger that, man, that it seems like people just hate the truth of God and hate the truth of God's word. We're not angry necessarily at the person and wish they were dead, but we just have this righteous indignation that God's word is dishonored, and people are unjustly harmed or whatever. but we need to be careful not to allow that to justify sin. So describe manifestation of anger, both inner and outer man. I kind of went on a tangent there, sorry. So some outer man manifestations of anger would be blowing up, attacking somebody verbally or physically. That's a outward man manifestation, right? Also, another outer man manifestation is clamming up and not talking. Again, this is also going to be some internal stuff there too, but clamming up, not speaking. It's the idea of I have a slow burn in my heart with my anger. I'm not saying anything to you. Denying it. That's outer man stuff. Yelling, screaming. Those are ways to deal with anger.
You say the outer man manifestation of anger would be others effective, meaning it would affect anyone else.
Well, both inner and outer man manifestations can do that. I think both.
What about slander as an outer manifestation? You're mad at somebody and you go slander somebody.
Yeah, slander, gossip. Yep. And that's going to more so affect somebody else than maybe my internalizing of just seething frustration, seething anger in my heart. But even that, I think it's going to affect somebody and how I'm talking to them and speaking with them. So inner man manifestations of anger, I think, would be your thoughts, thinking sinful thoughts, thinking hatred thoughts. This is Matthew 5. You've heard it said to you, you shall not murder, but whoever murders will be in danger of judgment. But I say to you, whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment of hell, right? Or whoever says you fool shall be in the danger of the fires of hell. So inner heart manifestations are just my thoughts. James 4, you have that conflict that's this waging war in your members. You become idolatrous in your heart about wanting justice or wanting to be proved right or whatever, in whatever is going on, and that's going to be manifested in climbing up and not saying something, or in saying harsh things, or saying rude things, or in slander or whatever. But the inner man manifestations are going to be primarily the heart, the root issue of desire for vindication, or desire to be seen as right, to the desire to be seen as the best, or whatever. Some biblical factors that drive anger. Not getting what I want. That's going to drive anger. Not getting what I want I think the James 4 ideas is key. I think not dealing with problems quickly is going to drive anger, because it just allows me to manifest, or not manifest, to dwell on the issues for a long time. I think not thinking biblically about myself or about God or about other people are going to drive anger, because I think I'm so much greater than I am. Or you could simply say having a low view of God and a high view of man, or high view of myself, is going to drive my anger. I think it's probably one of the bigger things. We get angry because we think we're God. We think we're so awesome.
Right.
Oh, how dare they offend me? And again, I do this. I do this even with my own sweet dear kids. How dare you disrespect Dad? I am Dad. Do what I say. Sometimes I get angry with the cow because it has horns, and I can kind of feed the dumb thing and jabs me with the horn. It's like being playful, and I grab the horn, throw the head away, just kind of push it. I get kind of angry, you know, like, how dare this cow feed, like, I'm trying to feed it and it's like jabbing me with the horn. You know, it's, I need to learn to not respond in that way. But it's kind of like the idea of, I think I'm so great and I deserve to not be jabbed in the side by a stupid horn because I'm trying to like do something kind. Well, I mean, that's just life, right? We're trying to serve people, love people, and they jab us. Well, then I get angry. Well, then it's showing, well, why am I doing this? Why am I serving them? I'm serving them for my own purpose, to feel great about myself, or because I think they deserve to honor me or whatever. So it's gonna manifest in different ways. So you can come up with maybe other biblical factors. It's several ways to deal with anger, to respond to it. You know, repent. Repent. Ask God's forgiveness. You want to deal with that repentance. You want to look at your idolatrous thoughts, idolatrous thinking about what you're wanting. You want to be like Joseph in Genesis 50:21 and Romans 12:21 of not returning evil for evil, but returning good for evil. You want to respond that way. You want to learn how to better maybe communicate the problems at hand. So maybe the anger is a relational sort of conflict or something. You want to learn how to better communicate and solve problems quickly. So Ephesians 4:25-32. James 1. You memorize the verses on James 1. Be slow to anger. You want to pray. So part of answering questions, you want to pray. You want to memorize scripture, read the Bible, and pray. You want to see God in the midst of the trial or the situation or the circumstance and see, what is God doing here? What is he teaching me? Maybe what he's teaching me is I'm too angry. And so I need to learn that I need to not be angry, but to respond in patience. Again, what's the opposite? So if I'm going to put off anger, my sinful emotion of anger, what's the put on? Love, patience. Because the word patient in the Hebrew and in the Greek has the idea of a long way from wrath, a long way from anger. So if I'm not going to be angry, I need to be patient. Love is what? Patient. It's a long way from wrath, a long way from blowing up, a long way from being angry. And so in order for me to develop that, I need to make sure I'm thinking on biblical thoughts. I'm having godly motives. I'm trying to develop the fruit of the Spirit in my life that is lacking. I need to make sure I'm using right words, proper words, right thinking, right speaking, right acting, right living, according to God's word. That's motivated from a worship and a love of Him.
Matt,
Not making excuses of my sin. Yeah, Mary.
Wouldn't a strategy to respond to anger is helping our counselees and ourselves to identify whatever when we feel that anger, to identify the idol of our heart. I mean, to get down to that, so we stop and take a moment and look at that, because from that comes repentance and praying and putting off and putting on.
Exactly. Yeah. Nope. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely want to make sure we're dealing with the heart motivations there and the worship and the idolatry. Yeah. What are you worshiping? What are you wanting? Yep. You want to identify that idolatrous thinking. Some other a book already mentioned, Uprooting Anger by Robert Jones, very helpful.
What was that
Lou
again?
Priolo it's called Uprooting Anger by Robert Jones. Lou Priolo has a book for how to help kids with anger, called Uprooting Anger. Or sorry, called The Heart of Anger. The Heart of Anger by Lou Priolo. David Powlison also has a book called Good and Angry. Good and Angry. It deals with the theology of anger. It's really helpful.
Who was that one by?
David Powlison. So he wrote that maybe 5-6 years ago, and he died about a year and a half, 2 years ago.
And the second one, The Heart of Anger, was by who?
Lou Priolo, Priolo.
Okay.
Blue Priolo. But that was more directed towards how do you, as parents, shepherd a child with an anger struggle. But still helpful. Good. Any other thoughts on that one, on anger? We'll probably have time for one more here on depression. Cool. So question 5 then, this is on dealing with depression. So very similar, provide a definition of depression, manifestations, both inner and outer man, what drives it, and then how do you deal with it? Man, it's so hard to describe and to define depression in just a few sentences. David Powelson just says depression is a loss of all hope, the frustration of all desires, the agitation or agitated and razor edge of misery. That's his definition. Let me just say this: the culture describes and defines depression as basically based off of the DSM-5. Used to be the DSM-4, now it's the DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistics Manual for Mental Disorders, now volume 5. But they would say that depression is you have a depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, based off a subjective report from yourself or other people. They would say depression is a diminished interest and pleasure of activities that you used to enjoy, weight loss or weight gain, insomnia or hypersomnia, fatigue or loss of energy. That's me. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive inappropriate guilt, diminished ability to think or to concentrate, recurring thoughts of death, recurrent suicidal ideation, which is just thinking about ways to kill yourself without specific plan or suicidal attempts. So that's kind of how they would describe it based off the DSM. So how we want to understand it is a couple different ways. Look, the Bible doesn't use the term depression necessarily. Paul does say in one place in 2 Corinthians he was depressed, depressed or despairing even of life. Depression is more of a contemporary term, but the Bible does talk about and describe the idea of depression. Just doesn't necessarily use the word. So I think that biblically you could define depression as allowing feelings of like sadness, discouragement, or feeling down to determine your functioning. You can say biblical depression, or biblical way to describe depression is the allowing the feelings of depression, allowing the feelings of discouragement, the feeling of being down or feeling blue to determine a person's functioning, to determine what they do or what they don't do. Oftentimes, depression can be used as an excuse for behavior based off of how you feel. And so you want to, there's two sort of components with depression: is a feeling orientation, a feeling being present, of feeling down, feeling discouraged, feeling just blue. And then secondly, acting upon those feelings, or not acting upon those sad feelings. And the term depression is thrown around so much today that I think we've forgotten biblically how to be sad. I think we've forgotten that it's okay to be sad, and to be sad doesn't mean you're depressed. The culture doesn't want you to be sad. The culture doesn't like to be sad. The culture doesn't want any sense of sadness and sorrow. But biblically, I think it's okay. We can be sad at times. We feel sad like people are in sin. Paul said, I'm in labor pains until Christ is formed in you. Paul said also in 2 Corinthians, he was like sorrowful over their like lack of repentance, and he was just sad about their way of life. But then he was rejoiced when Timothy or Titus, I can't remember who, like Timothy, came back to him with a positive report of how they were living. I think Paul even says, like we mentions multiple times in some of his letters, of we struggle over you. There's despair. As an elder team and leadership team, and even in our church, I mean, there are times we're just sad over people's sin. We're discouraged over their sin. We're discouraged over our own sin. So I think it's okay to be sad, and we need to kind of have a better theology of sadness. But the culture doesn't like that, and so they label it depression, and you need to get over it, take a pill, and do whatever, and be happy. But I think we need to differentiate between depression, as in I'm no longer functioning, I'm no longer acting, I'm no longer thinking biblically or thinking right, but I've just given up all hope. I think it's different than I'm just sad, and maybe I'm sad for a few days. I struggle with this a little bit. Sometimes sometimes there are days when I'm just so sad, and like I don't know why, I'm just discouraged over probably my own sin or the sin of other things going on around me, or just the amount of things that are going on, and I just like I have a hard time functioning sometimes, and I need to, by the grace of God, just think biblically and think clearly, and thank the Lord for the trial, and think through what's going on, and obey even if I feel sad. One of the important things in depression is there's a downward spiral of, well, I feel sad, so I'm not going to do this. I still feel sad that I'm not going to do this, and I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to do this. And you just have this downward spiral effect of disobedience that leads to greater and greater guilt, and greater sad feelings, and greater depression. But many times we don't want to recognize that. Many times we'll blame it on a circumstance, or blame it on a person, or blame it on a feeling, or blame it on, well, I don't want to feel sad. Why do I feel sad if I don't want to feel sad? I don't know. You're human. You feel sad maybe because you're guilty, but you don't see that, and you don't acknowledge that. Some other manifestations of depression for the inner man is maybe you have suicidal ideation. So then you're thinking. You have your idolatry. You have some idol that you're not getting, so you're depressed about it. Maybe unbelief about God. You disbelieve God. You just disbelieve His promises. Like, yeah, right, God. You say like you love me, or you say you're going to be with me, but you're not here. This is a trial. This is too hard. What is happening? So there could be some unbelief there. Could be guilt. Probably a lot of guilt for past sins or present sins or temptations or whatever. Manifestations of depression, I think, could be a lot of it's going to be guilt, and maybe you feel guilty for being depressed. You feel guilty because you take medication for being depressed. You feel guilty because you didn't deal with sin, and now somebody's died. You didn't deal with it. You feel guilty because you got angry at somebody, and now that relationship's broken, and they don't want to restore it or whatever. You feel guilty because you feel guilty. So there's some inner man manifestations. Outer man, again, maybe you feel numb, you feel this apathy about stuff, you feel sad, you're not acting rightly, you're not obeying rightly, you're not taking care of the duties that you be taking care of, maybe in the home, dishes are piling up, laundry. That could be due to a bunch of different things, obviously, but just examples here. You're not disciplining the kids because you're like, oh, who cares, whatever, just let them watch Frozen. You know that your feelings are now dictating what you do. Your feelings are dictating your actions. Well, I don't feel like going to work. Or I don't feel like exercising. I don't feel like going to church. I don't feel like talking to the person. I don't feel like whatever. Because my life isn't now going the way I want to because Trump lost. Now I'm depressed. And what's the point? Again, you just have this complicated problem of downward spiraling based off of my feeling, and that's going to lead me to greater and greater sadness or despair.
Do you think, Matt, do you think that Christ ever had difficulties with depression? I might have just committed heresy.
I think there was points where he was sad. He was sorrowful over people's sin, over the curse of mankind, of death. That's why he wept at the tomb of Lazarus, not because he was sad his friend wasn't gonna see him again, because he would raise them up a minute later. But he was sorrowful over just the sadness of sin, and the curse upon humanity. I think there are times like that where he was sorrowful and he was sad. But I would be very hesitant to say that, oh yeah, Jesus experienced like depression and despair. I don't think so, because he was thinking rightly about life and about difficulty. And yeah, even the garden before he went to the cross, I mean, there was struggle, there was pain in his heart, and there was a wrestling, but I don't think there was despair. Scripture doesn't say that. So I think when we place those emotions upon Christ based off our experience, I think we're going too far.
Yeah. I think Paul kind of comments to it when he says that we're, are the godly Christian response to outward circumstances that would produce a sorrowfulness in us.
Yeah.
That we go too far if we despair, but he remains perplexed, perplexed, but not despairing.
Yeah.
And I think that you could put that in Christ. You could put that he's sorrowfully perplexed at the lostness of man, though never sinning.
Yeah.
In despair.
Yeah. But I don't think he was in despair or depressed by our understanding, because he was because of his ability to think through Scripture. Again, we're afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not despairing, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying about in our body the dying of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may be manifested in our body.
What scripture is that one again?
2 Corinthians 4, 7 through 18.
Also, he says he came to do the will of his Father, and the will of his Father is he came to die. So he knew what he was going to what was going to happen.
Yeah, he knew. Yep. Yeah, it wasn't a surprise. He knew, but there's still difficulty, obviously, there we see in the garden. But yeah, he knew that. He was thinking clearly. 2 Corinthians 4:16 says, "Therefore we do not lose heart. Though our outer man is decaying, our inner man is being renewed day by day. For momentary light affliction is producing for us an eternal weight of glory far beyond comparison." Look at the things we don't look at the things that are temporary but eternal. Hebrews 13 says that, Hebrews 13, Hebrews 12. Fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, sat down on the right hand of the throne of God. So I think those scriptures would indicate that Christ didn't experience that. But now people are going to say, well, does that mean Christ, he says he was tempted in every way we are, yet without sin? That's, but he didn't sin.
Yeah.
He didn't sin. Sure, he was sad. Sure, absolutely.
It's interesting. Spurgeon, you look at history and you see these godly examples of like heightened worship in the hearts of the redeemed. And in those heightened worshiped redeemed, there is almost an equally like low soul. And it almost seems like the working definition of depression, does it go too far that it becomes outward? Because depression necessarily is just something that's normal this side of eternity and Eden. It's very normal because we're worshipers that are broken. So if we're walking in the spirit of life in Christ, our worship is excelling, it's growing, we're in Christ, so worshiping rightly. And if we're walking in the spirit of the law and death, depression is just normal because we're broken worshipers. So it's a consequence of broken worship.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. That depression is very normal on this side of heaven, and the fact that we try to make it abnormal by making it a diagnosis and a disease makes us think maybe something's wrong with me. Well, sure, you're a sinner, but it's normal. Yeah.
Question. Along those lines, there are some folks that I know that have had cancer, and some of the medications that they have to go through and the treatments they have to go through biologically completely deplete some of the stuff that's
Yes.
brain stuff, you know.
Yeah.
And how do we address some of the stuff that maybe has a biological base because of medical treatment, or how do we, or do we differentiate that at all, or what?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I don't really have time right now because it's almost 10 o'clock to deal with that in detail. But obviously, there are going to be some medical issues that are going to factor into a depressed mood. And so that's partly answer the question up here is explain the biblical factors that drive depression. One of them could be a medical diagnosis in the sense of like a legit medical issue like cancer or even Parkinson's has been known to do that as well because of the goofy stuff in the brain. And some thyroid issues can lead somebody to a more depressed mood. However, again, I hesitate to say, well, it's making them depressed. Well, it's making them just more sad and just more maybe kind of down in their thinking. But it doesn't mean that they're depressed in the sense of now they can't like function. So again, example, somebody who has Parkinson's, they feel loss. They feel a loss, sort of speaking by experience here, but not so much yet, thankfully, because they can't do what they used to do anymore. Well, there's two ways to think about that. One way to think about it is God gave me this trial to grow me. I need to think of a new ministry now. I can't do what I used to do, and that's fine. That's just part of getting old, and that stinks and whatever. Or I could respond to by, I can't do what I want to do anymore. I can't do what I used to do. So now I'm just super discouraged. I'm just going to give up.
Yeah.
There's a medical aspect to it as well. But I think we don't want to let the medical aspects determine our thinking. That's hard. That's tricky, and it's sort of controversial.
Yeah.
Jeremiah 17:6-7. There's whatever circumstances would bring someone to depression, there's a response of trusting in self and making self its own strength, or trusting in God and making God our strength. And someone even as heightened at Spurgeon, he was so tempted to trust in himself that what he realized in his ministry was depression was the thing God used to always keep him level-headed in needing grace. It's a help. It could be a help.
So as well. Yeah. Depression is a suffering. Depression could be a trial that the Lord is using in someone's life, like Spurgeon or Lloyd Jones or Bunyan or multiple other people, Dr. Somerville, to grow them and to mature them and to bring them to their knees to say, I need Christ more every day.
And what a beautiful picture the garden is of bringing us to the brink of that feeling, of that despair, and then and showing ourselves and others what Christ chose to do, because he point, but chose the will of the Father, and that's what we get to do, when we're at that point.
It's a great example, a good example to use. For sure. Let me just finish up the answer real quick here. So some factors that drive depression. One, you could say, a legitimate medical diagnosis. But also, you could say unbiblical thinking. Unbiblical thinking about trials and difficult circumstances of life. A pattern, a downward pattern, downward spiral of disobedience to the Lord, unrepentant guilt, undealt with guilt, living by feelings, not by faith. I mean, those are probably just some of the bigger ones. And then how do you deal with it? Some biblical principles, obviously, repenting of any known sin, repenting of maybe a lack of faith and trust in the Lord. You want to help people to not focus on their circumstance, but focus on the truth of God, the promises of God. So Philippians 4 can be helpful there. Think on things that are true and so on. You want to help somebody change their thinking to determine their obedience based off of principles of God's word rather than their feeling. You want to help them see, look, you might not be functioning at a normal level like you used to, and so that's just what the Lord's given to you. So now you need to continue to think rightly and walk in obedience, no matter kind of what percentage you're able to function at. You want to encourage even just a little bit of progress for them. Well, because I can't change in a week, what's the point? No, it's going to take a while. It may take years. That's okay. You want to believe right. You want to think right. You want to do right. And then you want to feel right later. You want to have them think through that pattern. Again, like Dr. Somerville, for months and months and months, his wife was like, we're going to church and you can just sit in the car afterwards and I'll talk to people. And I'm going to make you memorize verses. I'm going to plaster verses on the wall and have you memorize them and think about them. And I don't care how much you don't want to, you're going to do it. Because she just knew you need to think rightly here. You need to think biblically here. And so you want to help, you want to get them in the word to think clearly and to think biblically, scripturally about God, who he is, what he says he will do, and about his promises, and just having a high view of God. To help someone who's depressed, you want to help them to have a higher view of God, to not be thinking so much about what they can or what they can't do, or how they feel or how they don't feel, or how they want to improve their feelings, but you want to help them to change their thinking, to take their thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ, to not be determined to live life based off of just their emotional sort of sadness or happiness.
What about
You maybe want to help assign them some physical activity as well, assign them to do something like go on a walk, do the laundry, go walk around the park, call a friend to go do something with you or whatever. I don't know. You help them to do some of that stuff as well. You want to give them hope that it may take a while. You may not feel better right away, or it might take a while for you to feel anything different, but God is still at work in you. Philippians 1:6, God has promised to perfect you until the day of Christ. Philippians 2:12, 13, that God is at work in you to will and to work for his good pleasure. Even though you might not understand it, might not see it, God is still at work in you. Promise. God's at work in you. You might not know it, you might not experience it, but it doesn't matter. He's still at work in you as you're walking in his word and obeying him. So you want to give promises of hope like that as well. So some resources you could give them. Dr. Somerville's book, If I'm a Christian, Why Am I Depressed? Have them read through Job, first couple chapters of Job. You read through Philippians. Philippians is a book of joy. Again, give them some activities to do. Vacuum, do the laundry, do the dishes, mow the lawn, cook. I was one time when I gave to somebody one time, like, you need to make breakfast for your family twice a week. Start there. So don't read the newspaper. Don't go on Twitter. Don't go on social media. That's an assignment you need to give people nowadays. Don't go on social media. Oh, well, then how am I going to know? Who cares?
Yeah.
Who cares if you don't know who said what and what happened here? And that doesn't matter. That's just making you more sad. It makes no difference to you in your eternity in eternity. Who cares? Read a book. Go on a walk. Who cares what Trump said? Who cares what this goofy guy said? Or who cares? It doesn't matter. Just get rid of that stuff. And that's probably why a lot of people are depressed. Like, oh, somebody said something and offended me. Yeah, whatever. It's okay. Anyway, I've talked on and on. It's a little past 10. I apologize for that. Any last thoughts here, questions? We'll stop here and we'll pick up on question 6 probably in 2 weeks. That works for you guys.
I have a quick question. I was looking on the site this morning and I was relieved when you said that, because I went on biblicalcounseling.com and I was just kind of reviewing, and I thought I read like 1 to 15 pages. So when you said keep it short and do 1 page, I was like, yes. So I just want to make sure that I heard you say that right.
Yes, it's 1 to 1.5 pages, I think, is what.
Because it was a little overwhelming when I read that. And
And
then
it's
my other,
sorry, I was gonna say it's 1.5 spacing, just so you know. So it's not even just single spacing.
Jill, you can help me with that one.
Okay.
Yeah,
She has a-
1.5 spacing. Yeah, they go on the ACBC website. They have a very specific format, and if you don't format it the right way, they'll send it back and say fix it. They won't even look at it. They'll say fix it. Like they want you to follow their directions on purpose. So yeah, it's 1 to 1.5 pages. Maybe they say 15, but it should be 1.5. And also when you give verses, they don't really want you to quote the verses because it takes up too much space. They want you just to say, a verse, maybe give a concept and give references for the verses. That's newer. That wasn't like that when I took the exam. But they want you to not quote the verses because it'll take up too much space. And if you do give a quote from somebody else, it has to be short because they want to hear from your own words what you believe about the issue. Yeah, JJ.
I have another question way back on question 1. Do you think about the homework and then give it a couple days later, or do you give it right in the session?
So it depends. Typically, I try to give it as soon as I can. And so if it's a first case sort of issue, and I have a PDI beforehand, I'll go into it knowing general ideas and some homework. So I'll bring a couple ideas. Like Jill and I are going to go where she's counseling somebody. I'm just going to observe here in a few hours, but we have a few things to give. But just in case, one thing might be better than the other. So I'll typically go in knowing a couple of ideas, and a lot of them are going to be very similar no matter what the issue is. So one of the booklets I like to give out for the most part is called "Help I Want to Change" by Jim Neuheiser. One of the little help kind of mini booklets, the Lifeline series from Shepherd Press. I'll give that out to just a lot of people in a wide variety of issues. Or I'll have some scriptures in mind that I want them to read through or memorize based off of the issue from their PDI. But again, that could change. Okay, well, I thought you said this, but now you're just saying this, so I gotta rethink this. And so sometimes I'll say, hey, let me think and pray about that, and see what would be most helpful. In the meantime, I want you to be reading these verses. So I'll give them a few verses to kind of read through before I give them maybe more. But I don't want to wait too long. I want to give them maybe maybe later that day or the next day. I'll give them something. But typically I want to do it as quick as possible so they have time to think about it and to start working on it.
One question, Matt. What about for depression, the verse, and in everything give thanks, for this the will of God in Christ Jesus concerning you, that the act of giving thanks is a sacrifice of praise, and it doesn't mean you like your circumstances, but you do it as an act of obedience?
Yeah, yep, and that's kind of Philippians 4 as well. You're thanking the Lord, you're praying to him giving thanks to him. Yeah, we need to be thankful to the Lord no matter what our circumstances are. So that can be a helpful assignment for somebody who's struggling with fear or worry or depression. Just, hey, let's start a thankfulness journal, and just thank the Lord for all he's given you. I can only think of 5 things. Well, okay, start with 5 and then think of 5 more. And you want to help people think, that way of, okay, you can only think of 5 things you're thankful for. Well, how many shoes do you own? I'm thankful I own more than 1 pair of shoes. I'm thankful I have a house. I'm thankful that I have like electricity. And you like get them to think abroad, like you think about all this stuff that the Lord's given to you. So yeah, that's a helpful assignment.
Hey,
Thanks so
Matt,
much. It's great.
will you read the Robert Jones quote one more time? Biblical definition of anger.
Yeah, let me go up there. He says a whole person active response, whole person active response of
Mhm.
negative moral judgment against perceived evil.
Okay. Thanks. I had one word wrong. Thank you.
Yeah. No, again, it's a helpful definition because it's very broad, because it's perceived. So it could be right or it could be wrong,
Right.
depending on our perception. So, well, cool. Thanks, guys. Hopefully this was helpful. Helpful for me just to think through things again and make sure I'm thinking biblically about it. We didn't get as far as I had hoped, but that's okay.
We never do. It's all good, Matt. This is perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, so we kind of walked through 5 questions, and so maybe it's a good average for us or something. But again, maybe in 2 weeks I'll send another email and we'll do this again. Yeah, if you have any other questions, email me. I'll put this on our website somewhere. I'll send you links if you want to listen to it again. You can do that. But yeah, thanks, guys, and we'll, Lord willing, see you all again later.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
All
it.
right, yep. Yeah, bye.
Thank you.